Hi everyone, TardisGuy123 here, and today I'm doing a very special one-off video where I count down my top 6 Sixth Doctor audio stories. And just to quote this, I have not listened to every single Sixth Doctor audio story there is out there. I've only listened to, well, about 13 or 14 really. So yeah, my range isn't that diverse, but I think I've got enough to do a top 6. So most of them are from recent years. I think the earliest is 2012. But anyway, enough about the little details. Let's go on to number 6. So then, number 6 is the Rani Elite. It's a rather simple tale by Justin Richards, and it reintroduces us to the Rani, this time played by Siobhan Redmond in a new incarnation, as before unseen, exclusive to Big Finish Audio, and she is very good in this. This is a very good introduction story for her. Sets up this new incarnation brilliantly. Once again has that cold sense of just doing everything really. She's very cold, she's very calculating, does everything with a reason, doesn't do anything for fun, and some people have accused the Rani of simply being a female master, but I think when you look at her more closely, that simply isn't true. She is much more committed to the cause of science. She's just a very amoral scientist who does what she wants and just wants to pursue the course of science, really, just doesn't care who gets harmed in the process. And that's very different to the Master, who is very much more difficult to decipher, really. Sometimes he wants to kill the Doctor, sometimes he wants to get the Doctor to admit that he's better, and sometimes he wants to just rule the universe. But the Rani is a lot more clean cut than that. She's not really mad. She's just a scientist who's willing to go further than most other kinds of scientists.
Incredible. This booth is actually smaller on the inside.
The doors won't open.
But if you hang on just a moment...
Doctor, what are you...
Now, genius at work. That shouldn't have happened.
I have to say, you've been rather a disappointment. But very soon, this will all be over for you.
Thank you for the gun, Doctor.
Perry? But that's just it. You're not Perry, are you?
You see, you do know me after all. I knew you would. Spit it out, girl. I can see it's on the tip of your tongue.
The Rani!
In 5th place we have an episode from The Sixth Doctor, The Last Adventure, and this is the 3rd episode from that story, featuring the 6th Doctor, Flip, Jago and Lightfoot in Stage Fright. Now, very much all 4 of these stories in this set are standalone, so I'm counting each of them as separately, even though they do link into an overall arc. So that is my reasoning there as to not including the 6th Doctor, The Last Adventure as one story. It is an overall arc, but we have 4 individual episodes. But for this episode, Stage Fright, it is a wonderful Gothic story set in Victorian England. Of course, when you do that sort of Victorian London setting, you can't avoid all the Gothic horror tropes, and but it very much is also a psychological horror as well at the same time, because it's very much the Valeyard playing on the 6th Doctor and his reliance on his companions, and it's very fun in that sense, and it very much makes the 6th Doctor question himself, and he very much feels responsible for what the Valeyard's doing, because in some ways the Valeyard is him, and there's still that mystery going on there as to who is the Valeyard and what is his plan. But nevertheless, the story does contain itself quite well at the same time, and Jago and Lightfoot are of course wonderful, and Flip is my favourite 6th Doctor companion. She is great, and she's just everything you want in a companion, really. Well, a modern day companion anyway. There have been a lot of new series, well, all of the new series companions really, or at least the main ones, Rose, Martha, Donna, Amy, Clara. They've all been modern day companions, but none of them really compare to Flip. And so while I may have a bit of a, well, I don't want to say I have a stigma against using modern day companions, because I look at Flip and she turned out so well, and Donna is also great, but Flip is just another level. She is wonderful, and this story even has time to give her some character development too. Despite all the other stuff going on, despite the whole arc with the 6th Doctor and the Valeyard, and also Jago and Lightfoot being thrown in there as well, there's still room to fit in some character development for Flip, and that is why Matt Fitton is such a great writer. He fits that moment in there and gives it a little bit of a moment of humanity, and she's wonderful with Jago. They sort of have a bit of a double act going on there, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful episode.
Imagine, if you will, your friend lies dying. His injuries are mortal. There is no rescue, no salvation, no hope, only death.
In fourth place, funnily enough, we have The Fourth Wall by John Dorney. And admittedly, before I got this story, I wasn't really looking forward to it that much. I got it as we're along with the rest of the trilogy. And it was sort of like the middle part of the trilogy, the part that didn't seem that interesting. But then I saw it was by John Dorney, and suddenly my interest in it shot up a bit, and I was not let down. It is a great story, a very interesting story, something you usually don't see in, or hear in Doctor Who. And it very much plays with obviously the idea of the fourth wall and sort of like characters within plays or stories or movies or TV episodes or whatever, and so that has a very interesting take on that. And I don't want to spoil what goes on in this because it has so many great plot twists, so many great characters as well, funny characters. It's a very funny story, but it's also a very serious and dark story at the same time, and John Dorney manages to balance both out very equally. And that is why he is such an amazing writer. Like Matt Fitton, both of them are great writers. And John Dorney really has pulled off a wonderful feat with this story. And it's very difficult when you're telling a comedy story, and also trying to make it very dark and serious at the same time. Sometimes it can make the serious moments seem less worthwhile, and other times it can make the comedy seem a bit out of place. But here, John Dorney has managed to balance them both perfectly.
What the blazes? Oh, something's interfering with the signal.
Doctor, I feel weird.
What? You're fading out.
Oh, now don't. Where am I? Not right away. Oi! Don't worry, I'm coming.
Going back to The Last Adventure again now, we have the first story from the set, The End of the Line. And it's a very good story that kicks off the set very well. It's highly enjoyable. It features Constance Clark as a companion, and this was her first story released chronologically, but not in episode order of her own storyline. That was actually Crisscross, but nonetheless, it's the first released story for her, and it's a very good story for her. I think it works very well. It sort of has the job of introducing her, but at the same time it doesn't, so it's a bit odd there. But nevertheless, she is a great companion and works very well alongside the Sixth Doctor, and there is a wonderful twist in this, which I won't spoil, but it was wonderful listening to it. I did not expect it whatsoever, and overall it's just a very fun story. The least connected to the overall arc, hardly features the Valeyards, but nevertheless, as a standalone, it does work very well and is highly enjoyable. I do keep coming back to this one, and it also sort of plays off the idea that a lot of people listen to Big Finish on the commute while they're on the train, and obviously this story is set sort of like on a train that stops and mysterious things start happening, and it's very much plays off that, I think, and is a very wonderful story in its own right.
The simple fact is that I'm a Time Lord who's out of time. And the only thing between me and oblivion is you.
Now we come to the penultimate story, and that is The Curse of Davros. And this was very close to getting first place, it really was. I couldn't decide which one to go for, but ultimately this got second place, but that doesn't make it any less enjoyable. It is such a good romp by Jonathan Morris. It's got the Daleks, it's got Davros, it's got Napoleon, it's got all this wonderful stuff. It's sort of like Flip's introduction story, but not really, because she was introducing the story prior to this. But you don't have to listen to that one. This is sort of like where she joins the TARDIS crew and becomes a companion, and she's a very good character. All you really need to know is that she's met the Doctor before, and that's it. And it's wonderful to see this interplay between the Doctor and Davros. It's very much about the Doctor and Davros, but at the same time there's loads of huge action pieces going on in the background. It's an action-packed story. It's a bit slow towards the start, and admittedly that did put me off, but then when I listened to it again and again, that just didn't bother me anymore. And the flaws while it does have flaws, admittedly, they just become less and less noticeable each time I listen to the story. And that very much helps with the re-listening value of this one. This is one that I can just stick on any time, really, because it's such a fun romp, but also has some very heavy moments as well. It's not sort of like a light-hearted romp that you just would listen to on a Sunday afternoon, say. You do very much have to pay attention to this one, but at the same time, you do have a lot of fun listening to it.
So, if you don't want to do this, what do you want to do?
I don't know. I just wish something interesting would happen to me for once. Oh my god!
What the hell was that?
A flying saucer flies overhead and you ask what that was? I think he was in trouble. It looked like it was on fire.
And the rest?
Blimey. They didn't hang about, did they?
Not just the old bill, look. There's a whole load of army trucks. Look seriously heavy duty.
Yeah. There's no way we're going to get to it now.
Oh well, that's that then. We had a bit of a laugh.
Jared!
What is it?
Something else has come down.
What is it? Some sort of coffin?
It's not a coffin, you muppet. It's an escape catch-all.
What? You mean it came out of that flying saucer?
Well, duh. And it hasn't got any lights on it, so nobody would have seen it on the way down.
Are you sure about this?
What, are you scared?
No, I'm just thinking there might be an alien in there.
Well, then you'd better make sure you're ready to take a photo of it, hadn't you? Whoa!
Flip!
Before I reveal which story has come first place, and I know many of you have probably guessed it already, but before I do reveal that, I would like to just do a few honourable mentions here, and those are Crisscross, the Widow's Assassin, and We're an Isle, as you can see before you. All three are wonderful stories in their own right in different ways. Crisscross I do quite enjoy, and I'd highly recommend picking it up because it is a great way to get into the Sixth Doctor if you haven't already, and it introduces the new companion, Constance Clark, and it's just a great deal of fun for that. Admittedly, some parts of the story I didn't enjoy too much and did put me off. I sort of felt that it wasn't involved, it wasn't complex enough. I felt it was a little bit too simple, and I felt it could have gone a bit more high concept with some of the ideas that were presented in this story. It did go a little bit too mundane, a little bit too normal, but I think that's more because this is designed as a jumping on point for the Sixth Doctor, so they don't want to overpower new listeners with too much sort of complexity and just have a simple story to introduce you with. And that's fair enough. I can understand the reason behind that, and that's why I would recommend picking this one up and why it's getting an honourable mention, despite the fact that I personally do have some issues with it. Widow's Assassin I do really enjoy, and this one does go high concept. This one throws a plot twist in every 5 minutes. It really does. It really has loads of stuff going on. A little bit slow towards the start, didn't really know where it was going, but once it did really get going during the second part and third part, that was when I really enjoyed this story. Fourth part, however, did sort of mess about a bit too much, but nevertheless it is a highly enjoyable story. We're an Isle gets a mention because I loved the first 2 episodes. They are fantastic. They are some of the best I have listened to. They are really chilling, really creepy. They do interesting stuff with the Riran. There's a really interesting scene with Lisa Greenwood as Flip. It's wonderful, but the second 2 parts really do let this one down, and that's why it doesn't get a place on the list and why it's only an honourable mention. But nevertheless, great first 2 parts. And now with that out of the way, let's move on to first place. Yes, first place, my favourite Sixth Doctor audio story is, as you can see, Masters of Earth by Mark Wright and Clement Stott, 2 brilliant writers, and this really is a brilliant story. Being a big fan of the Dalek invasion of Earth, that's probably where I latched onto this story, because this is set during the Dalek occupation of Earth before that story, and it's very much about the Doctor trying to avoid changing history, but also trying to escape this time period with Perry and both of them being intact. And that's where a lot of the fun comes in with the story, but it also has loads of good plot twists. One of the plot twists I do feel was a little bit close to the end, in that made the 4th part feel a bit too rushed after that plot twist came in. But nevertheless, other than that, that's really my only big flaw with this. It is wonderful, it truly is. It's so great, it's so dark as well. It really does portray this gritty world that has been dominated by the Daleks. It's been subdued by the Daleks, and the Daleks are really terrifying in this at the same time. And then the Roadmen too, they're great. It's also throws in some other 60s Dalek tropes as well, and overall it is just a fantastic story. I really do enjoy this one. Unlike Curse of Davros, it's not one I can listen to all the time because it is quite a heavy one and it does suffer when you get into over familiarity with it. A bit like stories like Tomb of the Cybermen or Talents Moonshine. You don't want to overindulge them, and this is very much one of those stories. It's very effective when listened to after not having listened to it for a while. And you know, the music score's wonderful. It's got that wonderful sort of like ambient noise, that emptiness that really does work. And you know, being a big fan of post-apocalyptic stuff, this story just works superbly for me.
If I were to be captured, and if the Daleks were to examine my memories...
This is the Dalek Supreme!
So then, there they are, my top 6 Sixth Doctor audio stories. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will maybe pick some of these up if you haven't already, based on my recommendations, if they're the type of stories that you would like to listen to. I would highly recommend you do. All 6 of them are brilliant. Well, you kind of have to pick up 2 other ones in this case to get all 6 of these ones, because of the last adventure being packaged in one, but you know what I mean. It's just a lot of good stories before you right now. So thank you all for watching this video, everyone, and I will see you all next time with the review of Talons of Windshine. But until then, bye everyone.
Constance Clark, how do you do?
Name.
Charlotte Pollard. Miss Philippa Jackson.
After you, Miss Bush.
The Doctor saves the day again.
My name is Yardvale. Mr. Timothy Yardvale.
Please open the door.
It's a trick. He's lying. How do you know?
No. What? No. No!
Werewolves?
Werewolves, surely.
You'll have it your way. The point is, werewolves on wheels.
Werewolves in uniform? Werewolves in hoods?
Someone is sending a message. A very personal message. To me.
He's saving us. Come on, keep going.
Who's saving us? Where are we going?
Come in, please. Oh, it's just taken a lump out of one of... Ah! Doctor, for goodness sake, just...
Mel? Mel, is that you?
Doctor?
You've only got 3 minutes left now.
3 minutes? 3 minutes to save my life. But the Valiard is a distillation of all my negative impulses. The simple fact is that I'm a Time Lord who's out of time.